This is Jannie, 15 months old. She'll never walk normally without medical treatment. Jannie is her real name, and these are her own parents.
We were terribly worried that morning. We were taking Jannie to the Pacific Northwest unit of the Shriners Hospital for Crippled Children in Portland, Oregon. Our doctor and a Shriners sponsor had helped us make application, and now at the Thursday morning clinic, we were to find out whether they would accept her for treatment here. The room was full of people. I never dreamed there'd be so many. A little girl came toward us. I didn't realize it then, but I was soon to learn a great deal about her cast and walking peg. They were trademarks of a wonderful new method of treatment developed here. We registered with the volunteer worker at the desk. She explained that first Jannie would be given a preliminary examination by a staff doctor. She was awfully nice to us. She got out Jannie's record and sent us into a small booth. We undressed Jannie and waited. She wanted to see what was in the folder with her name on it. To look at her plump little body, you'd never dream there could be anything wrong with her. The staff doctor examined her and asked questions. We explained to him how she could stand up holding on to something, but her feet turned out balance when she tried to walk. He sent us down the hall to have her x-rayed. The man there was gentle with her. You could tell he was used to children. He made little jokes with her so she wouldn't mind being held down. We went outdoors while the x-rays were being processed and until our turn came to see the chief surgeon. This mother was bringing her twins for their periodic checkup at the clinic. More than 9,000 children have been treated at this outpatient clinic. Once her twins were as bad off as Jannie. They'd been in and out of the hospital for 2 years, and now look at them. If only Jannie could have the same chance. Here she would get medical care we could never hope to provide for her ourselves. Parents who had come early were finished with their appointments and were going home. It was interesting watching them. Her cast and her peg didn't bother her at all. I began to realize the courage demanded of some parents, like this couple with their 2 handsome boys. He's so proud of himself. When they took off his shirt to show us how his new hand works, I began to learn how many children are being fitted here with artificial hands, arms, and legs. Money for them is donated by Daughters of the Nile. Equipment for one child alone may eventually cost hundreds of dollars. As he grows, his artificial limbs must grow with him. Everything possible is done here to equip youngsters like these to lead normal, productive lives. The doctors work out solutions for each child's handicaps. I watched a little girl practice on her new legs. Her mother said that now she's as tall as other girls her own age. Then she showed me what she meant. There was a lump in my throat as we watched her walk into the clinic. It was time now for us to have our turn to see the chief surgeon. Soon our fears were confirmed. Jannie had bilateral congenital dislocated hips. The surgeon explained that hips are ball and socket joints. Her sockets were too shallow, so the heads of the femurs, or thigh bones, slid up and down when she tried to walk. Until her hips were stabilized, she would never walk normally. Treatment, traction reduction, and application of plaster cast. It would take about 2 years, he thought. She was to be admitted today. Before we could catch our breath, we were upstairs on the 2nd floor of the hospital talking to the head nurse in the hall outside the girls' ward. She wanted to know what Jannie ate, how she reacted to people, everything about her to help her adjust to hospital life. We didn't need to tell her Jannie liked people. Jannie didn't even look back at us when the attendant picked her up. She took her into the little girl's ward. How different it was from what I'd imagined. A radio playing, children laughing and joking with the resident doctor making his rounds. I could certainly tell that the people who work here love children. No matter how busy they are, they never run out of patience and affection and understanding. In the older girls' ward, 2 teenagers were playing the piano. One of them in a body cast, her bed pulled up to the piano. The nurse told me that they often do this after school hours. We left the hospital with the echoes of their laughter in our ears. It would help us over those lonely hours ahead. No roughhousing when Daddy got home. No sleepy little girl finishing her bottle in Daddy's arms. No bedtime clowning. Though our arms were empty, our hearts were full of hope. Now Jannie will have her chance to walk. In the hospital, youngsters crowded around her bed to welcome her. She got acquainted with the parakeet. At her first meal in the hospital, she was fed alone because things were strange. But next day, she took her place with the others and started learning how to drink from a cup. One afternoon, the all-star football teams, one from metropolitan Portland, the other from upstate Oregon, made a tour of the hospital before the big Shriners Hospital benefit game. Jannie was a little overawed. But teenage autograph hounds had a field day. The boys weren't interested in autographs. They were playing football. We could hardly wait for 2:30 Sunday afternoon when visiting hours began. Jannie didn't seem too excited to see us. I know she didn't miss us as much as we missed her. She had adjusted to the hospital so well that really I don't think she missed us at all. We watched a little girl with one dislocated hip walking on her peg. We wanted to find out all we could about the treatment, to know what to expect for Jannie. The little Indian girl from the Yukon had both hips dislocated, like Jannie. Oh, she's such a good child. Everyone loves her. In the nursery down the hall was a baby with Jannie's condition. Only she's luckier than Jannie, because her treatment is starting at 3 months. Doctors say the younger the child, the less drastic the treatment, and the shorter the time needed to correct the condition. When we came back from the nursery to say goodbye, Jannie was asleep. She needed a rest. As we stood watching her, I thought over what the doctor had just told us. Diagnostic studies were completed, and she was ready for surgery. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock was the time. I was waiting when they brought her back to the ward. This is what they mean by traction reduction. A metal pin is placed in the bone of each leg, and traction applied to pull the ball of the hip joint down opposite the socket. Weights are at the foot of the bed, and straps at the head of her bed hold Jannie in place. I was surprised at the ease with which they could feed her. She'd learned a new trick, drinking her milk through a straw. On Saturday mornings, the chief of staff stops to see her as he makes his rounds, accompanied by the resident doctors, medical students, the hospital superintendent, physical therapist, and office secretary. The chief surgeon notes Jannie's progress and dictates his instructions. Each phase of her treatment is recorded for study and rechecking. The material shows white in x-rays, giving doctors a better idea of the position of the head in relationship to the socket. Her x-rays show now that her right hip is pulled down to nearly perfect position, but the left one is still high and requires further traction. While the chief of staff continues his rounds, the head nurse brings Jannie a brand new dress. Daughters of the Nile make dresses for all the girls from the nursery tots up to the teenagers. They also make the pretty quilts and bed covers and many other articles. They have weekly sewing groups which keep dresses and linens mended. Toys donated to the hospital help Jannie pass the time happily. Several weeks later, I was watching them bring Jannie down the hall to the surgery again. Her hips were to be incorporated in a plaster cast with the position of the heads of the femur in proper relationship to the sockets. They would give her an anesthetic while they manipulated the hips into position and put on the cast. I waited outside. Afterwards, I followed her down into the ward. They put her into one of the little cubicles outside the ward. They decided to do only one leg this time. As soon as the other was in a cast, she would be ready for walking pegs. Doctors tell me that this method of treatment, developed here in the hospital, has brought marked improvement in results with congenital dislocated hips. Here in the cast room, brackets are put around her legs and two crutch tips fastened in place with plaster. As soon as she actually bears weight on her hips, the sockets and the heads of the femurs will develop more rapidly, and the sockets will be better shaped to contain the heads. Jannie wasn't too sure about those pegs. In her first practice period, she let the attendant do all the walking. But she got used to the pegs, and of course they never interfered with her meals 3 times a day. I wish the wonderful people who donate food to the hospital could see for themselves what their contributions mean to the children being treated here. The food is good, it is well prepared, and there's wonderful variety, thanks to the generosity of friends at the hospital. Some friends give money, others donate supplies. Many, like these, give time and talent. For 28 years, members of the Portland Local 62 of the Associated Master Barbers have given free haircuts to the children at Shriners Hospital. Winter and summer, rain or shine, they arrive at 7 o'clock on their scheduled Sunday morning. They don't leave until every boy's hair is trimmed. The Portland unit of the Oregon Beauticians Association have been donating their services to the hospital since 1954. They come each month at 7 o'clock on the same Sunday morning as the barbers. Each operator brings a kit with combs, brushes, clips, pins, hairnets. They use hair dryers donated to the hospital by other friends. Here, as in the boys' wards, bed patients are given plenty of attention, too. The barbers and beauticians join with the ladies of the Oriental Shrine, the Amaranth, the Eastern Star, Job's Daughters, Rainbow Girls, the Bethel Order, and Daughters of the Nile, all such generous friends of the hospital. Even famous movie stars take time to visit the children. On her visit, Joan Crawford made sure that she talked to each child personally. She certainly made a hit with JANNIE. Things were a bit quiet after the excitement of Joan Crawford's visit. Of course, she could always improve her mind with a good book. Or take a little nap. Or comb her dolly's hair. JANNIE liked to have her own hair combed, especially since it's been cut. Some days life gets kind of serious. Mostly it's fun. But sometimes, as with all of it, it can be downright frustrating. One thing JANNIE likes, her practice periods for walking. To help her balance, 2 more pegs were added to her cast. She's the first patient in Portland Shriners Hospital to have 4 pegs. Right now, she has to be helped. But before long, she'll get the feel of walking. It takes time and practice, and lots of patience on the part of the young attendant. She makes a game of the whole thing. They have fun together. If JANNIE were a teenager in the hospital, she'd be in school every day. The regular school program is an important part of the hospital routine. School activities prevent homesickness and keep the children's minds occupied before and after surgery. Teachers here have special training, and they take a warm interest in each child. Older girls and boys, in grades 5 through 8 or 9, work in their wards mornings and afternoons. The primary girls work in one section of the new auditorium classroom, equipped with trapezoidal tables and colorful, comfortable chairs. Here, the arts and crafts teacher is supervising pasting and wrapping strips of newspapers into papier-mâché animals. The big new stage is behind the yellow-figured curtain here. This animal started out as a giraffe, but turned into a horse. Now he's getting a tail made of rope. It's encouraging to youngsters, seeing their work put up on display. The boys in primary grades work in a section of the new auditorium closed off from the girls' section by folding doors. Much schoolwork is remedial, planned to meet the needs of each child. The 4 full-time teachers at the hospital are under the State Department of Education for Handicapped Children and the Special Education Department of the Portland Public Schools. Bulletin boards in the classroom show that holidays are planned for weeks in advance, especially Halloween. At Christmas time, star Santa Clauses made by the children were mounted everywhere. Christmas decorations were still up on January 4th, 1955, when dedication ceremonies were held for the new addition to the hospital. The new addition provides space for 20 more beds and includes this big auditorium schoolroom where the program was held. We saw this inscription the day we came to take Jannie home for the first time. Now I was to learn how to care for Jannie when we got her home. The attendant showed me how she picked her up and how she held her. She was so good with Jannie. She braced her with a pillow when she fed her. Jannie had been here 5 months. This is home to her now. As I watched her, I could see the results of the love and care she had received here. How can a person ever really express their gratitude? More than 6,000 children have been treated here since the hospital opened in 1924. I know that all of those parents feel the same gratitude. After rest hour, we went down to the physical therapy department, where Jannie watched the little Indian girl practice in the walker. The physical therapist put Jannie down in the other walker. We held our breath when she let go of Jannie. Then we couldn't believe it. Our Jannie was walking. The physical therapist coaxed her to go get the doggie. She got tired pretty quickly, though. Pretty soon, she put Jannie down in rest position. I began to see that Jannie wasn't nearly so helpless in that cast as we thought she'd be. Another physical therapist helped me dress Jannie in her own clothes to wear home. She was so thoughtful, giving me advice about Jannie's care and exercise. In 2 months, we were to bring her back to have her cast changed and more x-rays made. We would do this every 2 or 3 months for the next year or so. Then, when Jannie's hips are firm in their sockets, the cast will come off, and physical therapy treatments will straighten her legs. When I think of how much all this will cost, and Jannie is only one child being given treatment here. It was wonderful to hold her in my arms again. The physical therapist showed Daddy how to fix a homemade walker for Jannie to practice on. Jannie had to get acquainted with her daddy all over again. I guess many parents go through this. The children are happy here. They're used to hospital routine. They don't want to leave. But while Jannie is home, her bed here can be given to another little girl in need of help.
We were taking Jannie home. We didn't realize it that day, but this trip down the hospital hall was to be repeated many times during the next 3 years. For the first 2 years, Jannie was in the hospital more than she was with us. During the 3rd year, as her legs became stronger, she was at home for months at a time. During those periods, we brought her to the clinic for regular checkups. How well I remember the first time she walked into the clinic beside me. "You carry baby, sister. I'll walk myself," Jannie said. She felt right at home with her friend, the hospital administrator. She looked forward to her visits with the chief surgeon, too. I always held my breath when he examined her. Would he be satisfied with her progress this time? He seemed to be, and then I knew he was because he told me that Jannie's brace could come off, and in another 2 months we were to bring her in for the final checkup which would release her from active treatment. Now, with no cast, no braces, nothing could hold her down. Sometimes when I'd watch her out in the backyard playing with a neighbor child, I'd remember how afraid we'd been that she'd never be able to play normally with other children. Now it wasn't a question of could she keep up with them. Instead it was could they keep up with her. She was the busiest, the most contented little girl you could ever imagine. At last, the day came for the checkup. Jannie didn't know how important this day was in her life. She visited with the doctor as usual. He told her to be a good girl and mind her mother. It was wonderful to see how pleased he was. Very good indeed. And then he added the words we've been praying to hear for so long. Jannie was being released from the hospital. Of course, the hospital staff will watch over her while she grows up. Yearly checkups will make sure she withstands the stresses and strains of adolescence. We know now that miracles do happen to us and to thousands of other parents who bring their children here, hardly daring to hope, and then, like us, see them walk out of Shriners Hospital on their own straight, sturdy legs.